A single father calls me at 2 a.m. His 8-year-old daughter isn't in her bed. The window in her room is wide open, and on her nightstand, there's a note that isn't in her handwriting. By the end of this case, one man's refusal to give up, even when we told him to wait, even when the trail went cold twice to pair, is the reason his daughter came home alive. I'm Marshall. This is another case I closed, and this is how it happened.
Daniel Reyes had raised his daughter Mia alone since she was 3, after losing his wife to illness. He worked nights at a warehouse, and his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, watched Mia while he was at work, a routine that had worked for years without a single problem. That night, Daniel came home at 1:50 a.m., same as always. He checked on Mia before going to bed himself, also same as always. Her bed was empty, her window was open, and that note on the nightstand wasn't hers. He called 911 before he even finished reading it. I want to be honest about something most people don't know. The first 90 minutes of a missing child case matter more than almost anything else that happens afterward. That's why I got out of bed and drove straight there the moment dispatch called me. Daniel met me at the door, already dressed, already searching the yard himself with a flashlight before I arrived. That mattered. It told me 2 things. He wasn't in shock, and he wasn't going to sit still and wait for us to work alone. The note on the nightstand said only, "She's safe. Don't call anyone or you'll regret it." That kind of message tells us something important. This wasn't a random stranger. This was someone who wanted Daniel to be afraid enough to stay quiet. He didn't. Mrs. Alvarez, the neighbor who watched Mia, mentioned something that changed the direction of the entire case almost immediately. Mia's biological mother's brother, an uncle named Curtis, had shown up twice in the past month, asking to see Mia, each time turned away by Daniel after a bitter falling out following his sister's death. Curtis had no custody rights, no legal claim, and according to Mrs. Alvarez, he'd said something the second time that stuck with her. "She's still family. One way or another, I'll see her." I brought Curtis in within the hour. He denied everything, said he'd been home all night, no one to confirm it. We searched Curtis's apartment with a warrant that same morning. Nothing. No sign of Mia, nothing connecting him directly to the note or the open window. His phone records placed him at a bar across town until nearly 1 a.m., confirmed independently by 2 bartenders. It wasn't him. This is the point in a case like this, where a lot of families lose hope. The obvious answer turns out to be wrong, and there's no new lead yet. I told Daniel we needed more time. He told me he wasn't going to just wait. He started reviewing every camera on his own street himself, going door to door before we'd even finished processing our own canvas, something I'd normally discourage, except in this case, it's exactly what cracked things open. Daniel came back to me that same afternoon with something none of our official canvassing had turned up yet. A neighbor 3 houses down had a doorbell camera that happened to catch the edge of the street around 1:15 a.m. Daniel had gone there himself and asked to see it before we did. The footage showed an unfamiliar car, parked briefly, then a figure walking toward Daniel's house and returning less than 10 minutes later, carrying something. It wasn't clear enough to identify a face, but it was clear enough to read a partial plate. I ran it immediately. It came back registered to a woman named Patricia Doyle, a name that meant nothing to Daniel at first until Mrs. Alvarez remembered something. Patricia had briefly worked as a substitute aide at Mia's school the previous semester. Patricia Doyle, we learned, had lost custody of her own daughter 2 years earlier, around the same age as Mia, following a lengthy family court case. Colleagues from the school described her as someone who'd grown unusually attached to a few of the children in her classroom that semester, including Mia. We pulled her address and, without much time to spare, coordinated an approach with backup rather than waiting for a lengthy warrant process, given the direct evidence linking her vehicle to the scene and the urgency of the situation. We arrived at a small rented house on the edge of town just before 6 p.m., under 16 hours after Mia had first gone missing. Patricia answered the door, and after a tense few minutes, allowed us inside without a struggle. Mia was found in a back bedroom, frightened but physically unharmed. Patricia had told her, according to Mia's own account afterward, that she was keeping her safe for a little while. A version of events that made clear this wasn't about ransom or malice in the traditional sense, but something rooted in Patricia's own unresolved loss. That didn't change the charges. Patricia was arrested on the spot for kidnapping. Daniel was waiting outside when we brought Mia out. I've seen a lot of reunions in this job. That one is still one of the ones I think about most, not just because of the relief, but because of how much of the case Daniel had personally pushed forward himself, at every single point where the trail could have gone cold. Patricia Doyle was later convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 9 years. At trial, prosecutors used the doorbell footage, the partial plate, and Mia's own testimony to build a case the defense couldn't meaningfully contest.
Daniel didn't wait for us to hand him an answer. He knocked on doors himself, found footage we hadn't gotten to yet, and refused to accept we need more time as a final answer. That kind of persistence doesn't always change the outcome of a case like this. This time, it did. I'm Marshall. That's another case closed. If you believe justice should always win, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next case.